Elysium, set in the year 2154, where the very wealthy live on a man-made space station called Elysium, while the rest of the population resides on a ruined Earth. A man takes on a mission that could bring equality to the polarized worlds. Starring Matt Damon, Jodie Foster, and Charlton Copley, written and directed by Neil Blomkamp, who also did District 9. Have a mini review for us, Bob?
Yeah, wow. With that setup, that was nicely done. I'm excited to see the movie again, except for here's my mini review. So,
Okay.
Elysium, I'm giving you 3 out of 5. Here's
Mm.
what I have to say for my 3 out of 5. Had high hopes for this sci-fi thriller with an intriguing wealth disparity premise, but watching it turned into an exercise of managing expectations. The most fascinating components were downplayed in favor of the should-be exhilarating bland. Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Okay. Disappointing.
Yeah,
That's what's
yeah.
coming out of your mini review to me.
I'm being generous. I wanted to like this so much more than I did, and I barely like it enough to give it a passable grade.
Mm.
How about you? Let's hear yours.
Yeah, okay. Starts with a powerful statement about inequality and social barriers. Cool visuals paint a vivid picture of a bleak dystopian future, but it can't figure out how to wrap things up. Ends up flattening out both its politics and its narrative. And it's a really hard one to give a star rating to because some things I liked, some things I really didn't like, and where the twain meet, hard to say. But I'm going to go with dun 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 3.5, Bob.
Oh, wow. Is this a first? Is this the first time you've actually had a rating higher than mine?
Ever? It can't be ever, can
Well,
it?
maybe not ever, but like since the beginning of our podcast,
Wow,
maybe.
I can't think of a counterexample. Maybe, maybe, but it's weird because this is not a movie that I think. Yeah, I really liked it.
Right, and now you're going to be the one who has to like defend it to my, negativity of being disappointed or something.
Yeah, that extra point 0.5 stars. There's a lot of daylight in there, huh? Well,
Yeah.
let's start though. I mean, there are some really cool things going on in this movie. I thought at least. So, I mean, what a bleak dystopian vision of the future, huh?
Yeah, and it seemed like it could be reality. Like writer director Neil, what's his name, did a great job of putting it together exactly how you could imagine this wealth disparity that we all know is omnipresent even in today's in the present day, and it's only been getting worse over time. And theoretically, you look at the graph, and this is how the world could end up in 100 years. And I thought he did a great job of setting us up with that.
Yeah, it's a real statement about the logical conclusion of that divide if it keeps getting exaggerated. And I don't think my politics are quite the same as Blomkamp's, but I did admire the way he created that world in such stark, vivid, color. For example, early on, I can see you try to talk. I'll just get this out. But early on, we see the police who are full-on robots. We
Yeah.
harass Max, which is Matt Damon's character, on his way to work in a way that just completely expresses how dehumanized the people on Earth are. The people in charge won't even send human beings to enforce laws or to be the judges that you can appeal to. And then where do we find out he works? In a factory building those exact same robots that are the instrument of his dehumanization. And I got to give props to Blomkamp for that setup.
Right, yeah, and that's like the first 10 minutes, and it was rocking it, and I liked where it was going, and you saw the disparity between the two extremes, and working for the man that barely pays your salary, who's living large. Yeah, it's tough, and but then what happens?
Well, I was going to say that I was impressed with Matt Damon's chops. I'm still on the positive
Oh, okay, okay,
column.
I'm sorry, we're not ready for the negative. Okay, yeah, no, Matt Damon's a likable character or a likable actor, and he does a likable character here who's kind of a hard ass trying to get back on the straight and narrow. But we do get the overblown flashbacks with the like childhood vision of greatness and childhood sweetheart sort of stuff. But all that said, fine, sure, it's working.
Yeah, no, you have a good point though. I mean, as far as that framing flashbacks, I was really thinking hard in the moment, and I was just thinking, would this movie have been just as good or better if we just chopped those out? Do they bring anything to the movie? And I think it would have been better if they just chopped it out. I don't think it really brought anything.
I agree, and especially opportunity cost. The movie wasn't that long anyway, which is actually nice. It was like an hour and 40 minutes. And if they would have used the flashback scenarios or film time for further plot development in the present of the story that was happening at hand, that really would have helped because it was lacking. But we'll get into that. But I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But I just wanted to get my full statement in about Matt Damon. I don't usually think of him in the abstract as like this leading man or action hero, but he can pull off pretty much anything and do it pretty well.
You don't think of him as a leading man hero, dude? I mean, have you not seen like all the Bourne movies?
No, I don't think of him as a stereotypical leading man, is what I mean.
Oh, okay. No, that's fair enough. Because even in the Bourne movies, you kind of root for him because he's not like square jaw, perfect height. He's tough and but he's a dude who like I feel like if I worked out, I could maybe be like him eventually. Not,
Yeah,
but I'm
a regular dude that just comes out of him, just exudes regular dudeness.
right. But I'm never gonna like turn into the Superman character because that's just like I could, that's not regular anymore.
Right, right, right. And Charlton Copley was, I'm going to say, rather delicious as a bad guy.
Yeah, yeah, with the South African accent.
I also love the visual effects. Blomkamp, like Guillermo del Toro, has a background in special effects, and it's just cool to see that being an integrated part of the director's vision. Like the space station Elysium is so pristine and designed, and Earth looks like it's basically a planet full of District 9 if you just spread that out everywhere. And like the vehicles are really striking and very distinctive to Blomkamp, and they help make the world what it is. Big thumbs up for me on the effects.
Yeah, totally agree. In fact, I would have loved to seen these sorts of effects. Of course, they're expensive, I'm sure, but if this was a mini series or even a reoccurring series, this even the premise with the effects, this could be like mind-blowingly awesome. As an hour and 35-minute movie, the effects are great, but it's about as far as it goes.
Okay, so that pretty much exhausts that part of everything I wanted to say. But as Elysium goes on, I definitely found a couple things bothering me that seemed just careless or lazy or I don't know what, but definitely detracted from my enjoyment. But I'll let you lead us on this part. What didn't you like, Bob?
Well, you talked about the initial premise of like how he has to work for the man that makes the robots that just beat him up. In fact, he gets his arm broken, but he still goes to work that same day, which is pretty extreme of an
Yeah.
introduction. Um, and then, without giving too much away, basically he has to do some rather intense manual labor that's kind of risky or comes with risks, and he ends up getting hurt on the job, and it's life-threatening, and it sort of gets him to where he wants to get to Elysium and get to this because there's these medical machines that are only available to the super rich, and they basically heal everything.
Right.
Um, we'll get to that problem in a second because it seems like that technology could be universally applied pretty easily the way it was portrayed in the movie, but whatever.
Right.
Um, but the initial point I wanted to make was just in the premise setup, the way he gets injured and the way things kind of happen, even that, and it would get kind of technically boring if you haven't seen the movie. It just felt lazy and like a forced plot point, like the screenplay almost was written with like dude gets hurt somehow and needs to have reason to go to moon colony because he's going to die. And then like the day before they're like, what if we did it this way? Because it just didn't it felt so ham-fisted and not as a believable on-the-work accident, to me anyway.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm gonna take that same sort of that drive or those super fancy machines, and I'm gonna say that I feel like um, they ruined a lot of the political and narrative structure of the whole movie. As we start with the morality and the circumstances are really complex. It's like, oh, interesting. He's going to make a cool statement about this. What would it be like? And I was thinking I was going along for the ride, even though, like I say, my politics aren't the same as his, I think. Um, but as we had that, and then the story goes on, it just becomes good against evil, basically. It's like, oh, everything would have been fixed if one person would have just pushed a button. It's not a problem of allocation of resources or distribution or structural capacity. It's just that the rich are withholding dicks. That's the reason this technology wasn't available,
I had the
right?
same, yeah, I had the same thought because without spoiling the ending, it's like you say, it's like, oh, It's just dicks run the world, and all you got to do is push a button, and there's unlimited resources. Basic economic theory be damned. You know, scarcity of resources isn't a problem in the world or universe, and it's just dicks running the universe in the future, and it's an allegory of dicks running the world today, as if that mythical button exists somewhere to solve poverty, and life would be better if we didn't have capitalism is almost the extreme way to interpret this, and I don't know if he intended that, but it felt very like, okay, you need a little more nuance. You set us up for greatness with this wealth disparity plot point, and then you sort of let us all down with the simplicity of the outcome.
Yeah, it was really disappointing because again, I felt like I was going, out of myself to give him the benefit of the doubt on this statement, and then he just sort of squandered it and ruined it, and I was super annoyed by that.
Yeah, and it almost, not to belabor the point, but it almost kind of ruined some of the other things about the movie that could have been cool. Like, for instance, there were some decent fight scenes, and there were some theoretically forgivable plot points of why does this character get away with this, or this ship makes it through the orbital missile defense system, but this one doesn't. Because we kind of start off, we see very clearly the villain, one of the villains anyway, played by Jodie Foster, is ruthless in her immigration policy in the sense that she'll just blow up any illegals trying to come to this moon colony. Um, but then later in the movie, there's like a really pivotal plot point where like a ship of bandits needs to come through, and they just sort of like make it through with no problem. And there's like no like we had to dodge a missile or anything happened. So there's a lot of like stuff like that that could be forgivable, but you just sort of notice some of the flaws more when the other flaw that we just talked about forever is so
Right.
prevalent.
Yeah, and I had one more sort of plot thing. It was just all story based, not about the politics. But there were a few people that at various points you could think of as the bad guy. But at a certain point, one of them goes, Heisenberg on the joint, getting into the empire business, and becomes the one baddest guy, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I didn't understand what made him do it, or why he did it, or if he'd ever had those sorts of ambitions before. It seemed forced and just like, oh, we want to have cool fight scenes, so this is what we're going to do.
Right, yeah. I mean, you hear something in the beginning like, "Hey, we should be careful with that guy on our team. He's kind of unstable." And then like that's like foreshadowing for him going apeshit crazy at the end. You're like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of lazy writing, but sure." Others would develop the character over time, give us a reason for him to like go apeshit crazy, but whatever. We'll
Yeah.
watch the fight scenes.
So yeah, has some serious drawbacks, and it disappointing, as you sort of conveyed in your mini review, that because it has a lot of promise, and it seems like it could be going places, but then it doesn't really deliver.
Right, and also coming from this director, this writer-director, because I absolutely love District 9, which I know maybe for you the disparity between that movie and this movie maybe isn't as great. Although I'd probably wonder, I'd guess you like that I guess you'd like District 9 more than this movie, but probably not as much of a difference as me, right?
It's been a while. I wasn't in the movie reviewing business at the time. I feel like I had similar issues with District 9, but I can't remember in comparison exactly.
Well, I remember it. It's been a while for me too. I saw it in theaters. I've been meaning to rewatch it, but I think the political statement was a little stronger and better supported, and the conclusion as well was a little more satisfying, even though in some ways it was more open-ended or not as you didn't get as much closure, but it wasn't like ham-fisted, over-the-top Hollywood closure like Elysium is, which is just a forced, Disneyland fairy tale. We
Yeah.
can all live forever. Sorry, did I
Right.
just spoil it?
Yeah. Right. I think that yeah, I think District 9 is generally regarded as a better movie than this one.
For sure.
A couple other thoughts just to throw out there. What did you think of Elysium as Utopia, a huge suburb? Is that where you want to live, Bob?
Well, the way they portrayed it with nice green shrubbery, and it's not like most suburbs I see. It looked more like gated communities, and
Yeah, that's true.
if that's the high end of the suburb, definitely not metropolitan or with tall buildings necessarily, but I have to admit I sort of digged it. I was like, I want to be part of the 1% if that's what it means.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm more of an urban center guy. I wish there would have been like a city you could live in. Oh well.
Right.
Um, and then one other thing, I just feel like saying this. I like seeing Diego Luna as Max's friend. I remember him from Y Tu Mamá También and other things. Nice to see him again.
Yeah, yeah, he has a nice small role, but he does a good job. I agree.
All right. So what we got? We got 3 from Bob, 3.5 from me. Go see it if you want. You'll probably be disappointed. Or don't see it. You won't be that disappointed if you don't see it.
Yeah, I totally agree.